Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alrighty, let's not waste any time because the light is playing with me today, as happens. It's perfectly cloudy, overcast day, and then I sit down to film and the sun is just like, hey, let me F with you for a while. Makes me roll my eyes. As you can tell by the title, today we're going to do some plus size characters. So for the most part, there's going to be female plus size characters, but I do have 4 plus size male characters at the end of this because I know that that is definitely something that is underrepresented. People always ask why. Well, let's be honest. Okay, let's be real honest with ourselves. As women reading romance, we tend to want to read the plus size woman getting the super sexy man. And we don't always see plus size husky men as super sexy. Let's be honest. Be honest. Doesn't mean we never want to read that or that it can't be hot. And in fact, I think a lot of dad bods are pretty hot, in my opinion, because it's like, man, that man works, but he doesn't get to spend it all in the gym. Okay, let's just be real. All right. So I'm not here to judge that. I'm just here to give you the recommendations that you want. So I'm going to give you some ladies who are plus size and are just absolutely scrumptious. Like, so excited about these. For the most part too, they're all going to be like pretty plump ladies. There's a couple that I think are more like mid-size, but I did go for a little more of the plump side of this because I know that sometimes when we see, you know, certain places recommending plus size characters, they don't actually mean really plus size characters, you know? We know, okay? All right, I do have an honorable mention before we start, which is At First Spite, which I did just read. This has a plus size heroine who her weight really isn't the topic in, well, not really isn't, it doesn't, besides her descriptors being come up. She doesn't have any problems with her weight. She doesn't have any struggles with eating. She doesn't have any of that. The hero doesn't blink at it and nobody else is either. So I do want to give it an honorable mention because I know that for some of us, nothing drags down a book with a plus size character faster than her body hating on herself. You know, often I can handle it when other people are teasing her about it, but if she like internalizes that, it can be really painful. So even though, being honest, I did not love At First Spite, it did not have to do with that. And I will have a more detailed review of that coming in a weekly wrap up, so you can see more what I meant about that. But again, I wanted to give it an honorable mention because as for fat/plus size rep, it was great. Like, that was there. And Olivia Dade has done pretty well with that in some of hers. Some of hers, the women do internalize it more than others. But this one, in my opinion, I mean, the woman was big and beautiful, and it was never, it's just how she was described. And the hero was, he was, how do we say it? He was salivating over it, and I'm here for that. So let us dive into some of these. And of course, we have to start with my favorite read of 2023, which was P.S. You're Intolerable. And if I remember to do it, there will be an art piece from the author. I will sneak it in here. You can buy this print on her Etsy if you want. But P.S. You're Intolerable, my favorite book of the year. I don't have to go into too much detail for this, but this is a pregnant executive assistant to the owner of a company, the CEO of the company. And he doesn't know she's pregnant when she gets hired, but she becomes indispensable to him. And then when she goes on maternity leave, which she is a single mother at that point, he cannot deal living without her. And so when he reaches out to her to be like, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? Being a little bit annoying. He's a bit needy, though he wouldn't admit it. He sees that she's living in kind of a difficult situation. So though he does like her a little, you know, he is having some romantic feelings for her by this point. He never really like pushes that at her at all. He offers her a safe place for her and her baby. And then we see him completely fall head over heels for the both of them and do every possible thing he can to make her theirs, them his. And yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And I will say Julia Wolf has plus size rep throughout her series and books that she has multiple of them. This is just my favorite and the one that I'll always hold up because our heroine, again, she doesn't, you know, she's also tattooed and big boobed and just so, you know, and she just has a baby in this. Like, there's so much about this heroine that I'm just like, oh, like, I have a girl crush on her, and seeing Elliot fawn over her, wonderful. Then we have one of my other favorites. This is from a few years ago. I think this one was 2021. Did this one come out? 2020, 2021. Let me see. 2022. Okay. And that is Tempt by Melanie Harlow. Now, I know I usually hold up the hunky cover, but I ended up getting this, the flower cover on a deal. Oh my goodness. And I actually think it's really beautiful. So I'll show this one. But this one is about Zach. And is this one Millie or I forget who it is. I was right. Yeah. This is Millie and Zach. And Millie is a wedding planner and a just wonderful person, and she is going to can't remember why she's there, but she's at this Manhattan hotel, and there's a creep who's hitting on her, and then this sexy older man steps in and tells the dude to fuck off, and then he tells her, he's like, I'm sorry, I know you had that, but I just couldn't listen to this guy be an asshole. And she's like, no, I am okay with you playing my knight in shining armor. In fact, you are sexy as hell. And he's got some salt and pepper streaks at the temples, and she's like, wow, this is a sexy, fine-ass man. And he is actually a security specialist. He's an ex-Navy SEAL because, of course, he is. All of Melanie's guys have been in the military at some point, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. And they end up having this amazing one-night stand that is super, super hot when they were in New York. But then she goes back home, and he goes back to where he lives, which I believe he lives on the West Coast, and she's in, I think, like, the Cloverleaf Farms area is in, like, Michigan or something. Anyway, very far away from each other. But when they see each other again, it is actually for a wedding she is planning, a wedding of her ex-boyfriend, who it becomes clear is actually Zach's son, which Zach did not know he had a child. So there was that. A girlfriend that he had just had a fling with himself all these years ago never told him he was a dad. And he even admits, he's like, I wouldn't have necessarily been a great dad back then, but he didn't know it. So before this guy is getting married, he wants to find his dad. The mom has passed. His mom is gone. And he wants to find his dad. And so he reaches out to him and he invites him to his wedding. So all of that to lead up to it, Zach agrees. He comes to this wedding, and who should be the wedding planner but the gorgeous, gorgeous woman he had a one-night stand with, who is also his long-lost son's ex. Fuck. For both of them, right? So this ends up being like a secret relationship, also a long-distance relationship. It's one of my, I think, favorite long-distance relationships I've ever read. I loved how, like, adult and communicative they were, which they're kind of forced to be because of the distance between them. Like, if you want to make a long-distance relationship work, you have to be really open and honest, even more so because you don't have the person's presence to keep the relationship going. And so I just love this, and I loved Millie and Zach and how they see if their two lives, which are so far away from each other and are also so, you know, different points in their life, if it can work. So love it. Okay, then there is one that I just read, and this is another too where the author, a lot of her characters are plus size, but this is my favorite one, so I'm going to share that. So there is Dom by S.J. Tilley. Yeah, this author, she has just went bonkers. And I talk about her all the time now because I met her last year at a book convention when Nero had just come out, and it wasn't anything yet. It wasn't. Now this book has so many ratings on Goodreads and Amazon, and all of her books are trending. This whole series has just went bonkers. She also has a hockey series. She also has a small town series. And they've just been amazing. Now for me, her books have all been high on the cheese factor. They really have. But I enjoyed Nero and King and Dom for two reasons. One, I had the audiobook, and the narration by Jack Callahan is just great. Like, he makes these men just so endearing. And also because they tell about a local mafia, right? So Nero and King take place in Minneapolis, which, if you don't know, I lived in Minnesota for 23 years of my life, and now I live in North Dakota, and they actually go to Fargo in one of them. So anyway, that's my backstory with why I like stuck with the series, because Nero and King were just like okay for me. But again, I loved the audiobooks and it was fun. And I see all my viewers and Instagrammers continually talking about these books. But Dom, the audiobook for Dom finally released last week. So I dived in, and this one I really, really connected with. This is a I tricked you into marriage type of thing. They get married in Vegas, and Dom tricks Val into marrying him for a mafia politics reason. And yeah, but he actually wants her as well. He just kind of is like, oh, I did it for political reasons. That's why I did it. When really he's totally into her. But she's plus sized, and she isn't necessarily like ashamed of her body, but she's also never had someone be like obsessed with her the way that Dom is. So that's a bit new for her. So I loved this. I love how what starts as him tricking her becomes him also being indignant for her not being treated as good as she should have been. And I'm a sucker for that. So this one is my favorite S.J. Tilly. It really is. This was easily a 5-star book for me. It just was. All of these men are bonkers, but I encourage you, if you think Nero is like too wacky, just keep going. This is one that I think she really found her stride with Dom. So I haven't read Hans yet because, again, I'm listening to the audiobook. So even though Hans is out, I'm going to wait until the audio is out. Okay, then we have a little quickie novella here. This one is called Blood Moon by Gillian Graves. This works as kind of a little standalone from her, and it's a strange moon novella. And this is actually 2 like dueling clubs, and she's a witch. And you can kind of tell from, it's hard to tell from this, but like she's a plus size witch. You can kind of see, got chunky thigh right there. And he's a vampire. And she, like I said, owns one club, and he is like a promoter and like is getting a different club off the ground, and they're competing. And so they're like doing a little bit of spying on each other, and they end up having this crazy sexual connection with each other. And they're like, you know what? We need to find a way to work together instead of against each other. So super quick, super hot. He's so into her, and she's just tattooed and sexy witch, and it's just hot between them. And I love it because Gillian Graves, she dedicated this to Angel, Spike, Eric, and Pam. Bite me. That's what she said in here. I love it. I love it. Okay, then we have one that like everybody shares about. I will admit that like I didn't necessarily like notice her plus sizeness as much when I was reading the story, but I know that it's there and that other people see it. But there is Stevie from Mile High. This is a kind of like hidden / kind of forbidden. It's not like super forbidden, but Xander's is a co-captain of this hockey team, and Stevie is a flight attendant. And so she's one of the like flight attendants for the team's plane. So that means they travel wherever the team travels, and there's a no fraternization policy with that. And Xander, when he gets his eyes on her, he really wants her, but he's a playboy. He has a reputation around town, and she of course believes this reputation. Why wouldn't she? And she doesn't have room in her life for a fuckboy. She just doesn't. But Xander, he's determined, and he's gonna make it happen. And I mean, look at that sexy face. Okay, he's gonna make it happen. So of course, also this is the beginning of the Windy City series, which has been wonderful. I really have loved every book, and The Right Move was in my top 3 books of the year, and this was also very good. Mile High was very good. It's just that Ryan Shea, who's Stevie's brother, he kind of makes us all stupid with how hot he is, and wonderful. Okay, then we have Yearning for Her by Tiffany Roberts, and this is actually a standalone book from them. Tiffany and Robert is a husband and wife writing duo, if you didn't know, and they also have quite a few plus size characters in their repertoire, but this one's nice because it's a standalone, and this one is a fated mates between an incubus and a human woman, Willow, and he, you know, of course, feeds off the sexual pleasure of others. And he discovers that she is his mate after they have this one night stand. And what that means for an incubus is once you find your mate, they are the only one you can feed from anymore. You know, in a way of like, you're only supposed to be deriving pleasure from that mate now. He doesn't know this. And so after having this one night stand with her, he can't feed anywhere else. And so he's starving. And he doesn't understand what's happening because he didn't know about this. So he ends up tracking this woman down again and trying to get her to, you know, be with him again. And she's like, no, like I just got out of a really bad relationship. And so that one night stand was great, but like that's not me. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? Like we had such good, like I need you. And so he goes about, you know, being a little bit forceful about it. But Tiffany and Robert, there might be slightly dub con in here because he is able to like rile up her sexuality. But because she doesn't want him to starve, like he eventually has to admit like who he is. And she's like, because she doesn't want him to starve, she's like, well, you have to woo me. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? Like I need to eat. And what he discovers, and he's never discovered before, is that he doesn't only get fed from her sexual pleasure, but if he can bring her pleasure and joy in other ways, like just making her happy, he can get a different kind of food that way. So it's like, okay, well, I can woo her and date her and get like fed from the joy I'm bringing her, but also I really want to fuck her some more. So there's that. But anyway, this one is just wild. There's some great scenes. This is actually the special edition hardcover of it, which you can get on Amazon. It's just the hardcover version. It's a little bit of a different cover, but this was super sexy. And he has piercings here, and he's got a pierced dick. And I have lots of NSFW art for this because I'm a part of their Patreon, and it's so good. So definitely recommend that. Okay, then we have Games with the Orc by Catherine Moon. This one is book 1 in the Monster Smash Agency. And this one, we have our heroine. Isn't this pretty? I have this from the... And our heroine decides that she has some kinky wants. And when she ends up breaking up the relationship she's in, her name is Sunny, she has heard about the Monster Smash Agency and decides that she wants to try out all of her sexy desires. Monsters and stuff are known in this world, by the way. Like, people know about them and everything. And she has some, like, BDSM fantasies. She has some CNC and, like, captor-captive fantasies. And so with the Monster Smash Agency, you can, like, fill out a quiz, and they really discover what your wants are, and they'll pair you with a monster who can fulfill those needs for you. And so she ends up signing up for like this week-long fuck fest. Like, she's gonna live with him in this cabin for a week, and they'll get to try out like all her different fantasies. And she doesn't want to know like what's coming next. So she doesn't know whether there's gonna be like a primal play scene where now you're gonna run for me, or whether he's gonna have her act as his slave for a little while. And it's so great because and I say it this way, like, if you're someone who doesn't know if you'd want to read primal play or CNC because you've only ever heard of it in very dark scenarios, which I completely understand, because if you don't know if you'll like it and you try it, and it can be a lot, like that can be super heavy to just have that all, you know, to have that all come at you, right? I feel like this was a good one. I know it's also monster romance, like I get it, but all of this is consensual. They discuss everything, like they really talk about the rules and what the safe words are, and like how they'll know like if she needs aftercare and we're checking in. And I just think that Catherine Moon did that so well in this book. So if you're not into monster romance, like maybe still give this one a try. And also, if you are into primal play and CNC, like you're gonna love this. But I thought this was done so well. And also, I mean, this is very erotic as well. It's super smutty, because that's literally what it is her fantasy being fulfilled. And there is more to it, because the sex fest is only actually like the first third of this book. There's more, but I don't want to spoil that part of it. But yes, our heroine is a plus size beauty in here. And like, even look at the pretty artwork on the chapter. Like, it's a girl sitting under a tree. It's just great. I love this. I also do love book 2. It doesn't have a plus size heroine, but that one is a werewolf and a gargoyle. And the heroine had been turned into a werewolf against her will. And so now, like, she could hurt human men if she has sex with him. And so she pairs up with a gargoyle who's made of stone, and she can't really hurt him, so it's great. Okay, then the last one that is a female plus-size character, and then we'll do the male ones that I have. So a book that I feel like isn't getting enough love, and I really want it to, because not to be outdone, I will share this, of course. This one is in one of my previous videos. I have made a couple other videos with plus-size characters. I feel like I forgot to mention that. I'll have that linked up here. This author wrote Between Wrath and Mercy, which has a plus-size heroine in it. She's a mother. She has a absolutely voluptuous body, and so I love talking about that one. But the most recent release from that author was Feathers from the Sky, and this was a vampire/vampire hunter romance. And the heroine in this one is very plus size, like really decent size lady on here. So this is the special edition that I have, which has, I got a book box that she did with it. Has a beautiful pages on these. So yeah, this one is about Gwen and Roman. And Roman is a vampire. And Gwen, she is not aware of this in the beginning, but she is actually from a line of vampire hunters. And in this world, like, vampire hunters are like, you're born into it in the same way that, like, vampires, I believe they can be born or made in this world, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a hot minute. And the heroine, her father is actually someone who has killed members of Roman's family. And when they find out this man has a daughter, and she is, you know, just living her life, she's actually pretty depressed at the beginning of this. Like, there is some depression in here. That is one of the heavy things. And she's had some even suicidal ideation and stuff. And she ends up getting, the very, like, beginning of this is she actually goes to a boudoir photo shoot with a stranger, which I've actually seen some, like, Instagram, there's a few photographers who, like, do this. You can be paired with a stranger. And so Gwen goes to this and she does a boudoir photo shoot with a stranger who Roman has set it up so that he's the stranger having this photo shoot with her. And they end up having a hot, sexy time together during this. And I think they have a one-night scene after it. I can't quite remember now. It's been a little while. But anyway, he's trying to get to know her more. And eventually, very soon into this, it becomes a captor-captive because he kidnaps her to try to get information about what she knows. And now she didn't know that she was a vampire hunter. And so she doesn't have any information for him. But the vampires want revenge for their lot. And so they just want to kill her. And Roman, he of course is like, oh no, I'll kill her right now. Like, it's just fine. But he can't help but be drawn to her and want to find a way to use her so that he has a reason to keep her, type of thing. So there was so much in this. This does have a cliffhanger, but the next one is coming soon, and I think Jess did such a great idea. There are some reveals in here that just blew my fucking mind. It was amazing. So highly recommend. Oh, it's so pretty. I love that edition. Okay, now I'm going to share 4 plus size heroes. So yeah, the first one, and already I have some qualifications because like 2 of these, they're more just are like regular guy bodies. Like, I don't know another way to say it. Like, they're described as having soft bellies, but they still are maybe like bigger, huskier. It doesn't mean they're not strong, you know. But the one, of course, that I have to recommend is Soft Flannel Hank. This is an ex-police officer. This is also like Twilight fan fiction. Like, it's Charlie Swan fan fiction, but our heroine is a witch who's actually hiding in this small town. She's running from some bad vampires, and Charlie, sorry, his name isn't Charlie, it's Hank. Hank actually knows about the paranormal because he had a daughter who was involved with it. Okay, so you can see some of the stuff. And so now he knows things that he wished he didn't know, but he can't unknow them. And so when this heroine kind of accidentally draws him into some of these things, he still wants to help her because he's like, you know, I know a couple things, like, let me protect you. But she's a very skittish woman at the same time. So yeah, Hank is someone who wants to care for women, but women have always left him. His mom, his wife, his daughter. It's been tough on him. So he's a very, like, morose man, but he also loves so passionately, and he's a protector, and I wouldn't call him a beta male, but he also doesn't have to be the most dominant person in the room, if that makes sense. So he has this good balance that I love. And I love the story. It was so good. There is more coming, that not about, like, there's going to be other colors. This one has a full, like, HEA. There's going to be other couples, that we get. So I'm excited for more in this world. All right, then there is Zeni by Rebecca Weatherspoon, and I feel like this is the perfect time to share this one because Rebecca Weatherspoon finally just released another book in this series about a different couple, and so Zeni and her partner came up in this one. So Zeni, this is actually a marriage of convenience, but it's called a marriage of inconvenience. But Zeni finds out that to get an inheritance from her aunt, I believe it is, she has to marry this guy who was like friends with her aunt. And he is this bisexual, sexy, husky man. He is, so he's very surprised by this as well. But if they get married, she will be able to get this inheritance and everything. So they agree to do that. And they also are very attracted to each other. So they agree to also have sex while they're married. And yeah. So that's, of course, keeping it super basic, super simple. But there is some pretty hot stuff in here. Rebecca Weatherspoon always does some good spice. Like there's pegging in this because that is something that the hero enjoys, and the heroine enjoys being a little bit dominant sometimes too. So there's that, but mostly this is a sweet, like, it becomes almost like a friends to lovers thing because they get married because they need to for this, but then they become friends through it, and I love that. I love it. Okay, then there is Last Light by Claire Kent. So this is another one where Travis is described as just having like a normal body, and this takes place in Apocalypse. He's described as having a soft belly. You know, he's in his, I think, like mid 30s. Our heroine is in her early 20s, and they both are from the same town. He was a mechanic. He actually had fixed her cars before, and she had stayed behind with her grandmother after the asteroid hit Earth, and there's a sickness in the air, and a lot of people died from it. And she stayed behind to be with her grandmother until her grandmother died, and he stayed behind because he had a little girl with his ex-wife, and the ex-wife had already, you know, like the little girl was going to die. She was going to die. And he stayed behind with her while his wife went with a big group of people from their town to try to find a safer place to be. They were out of food. They weren't very protected. There's these roving bands they're called wolf packs, who are killing and raping and pillaging. And so both Lane and Travis are like left behind by this. And now this begins with like Lane is trying to make her way to more people, and he is as well. So he's like, well, let's travel together. And in the beginning, she's like, I don't trust anybody. Like, even though you might have been a nice guy before the apocalypse, I don't trust you. But quickly enough, he proves himself. He proves that he's there to help and not to hurt. And they end up traveling together. And Lane is actually a virgin, and she ends up propositioning Travis, who, I mean, he's attracted to her, of course, but he doesn't want her to feel like she needs to provide him with sexual favors for him to help her. Like, he's going to help her get where they need to go. And she's like, no, I get that. I understand you're a good guy. Got it. But also, there's no pleasure in this world right now. It's all just survival. So how about we both offer each other some pleasure? Because she's like, I would like that, and I'm sure you would like that, and this can be the little pleasure we're able to take out of this life. So this becomes a kind of like sex of convenience, like we're traveling together, but also they become like so into each other while this is happening. So I love it. You guys know I talk about Claire Kent all the time. This can be read as a standalone or really any time during the Kindled series if you want to. But to me, I consider it like the start. Both Haven and this one kind of take place at the same time, so you can really start wherever you want to. Okay, and then the last one I want to mention, I read this a long time ago, so I don't remember the details too well, but there is The Ladies' Champion by Marie Lipscomb. This will come up when you look up plus size or husky heroes. I believe there's like a trilogy of these, but yeah, he is a warrior, and he falls in love with a lady, and he has to fight for her, I think. Like, literally, it's been so long. I apologize, I don't have the details. But, I mean, just look at the cover. I mean, he looks hunky, doesn't he? He looks hunky. And definitely has that dad bod energy going on, right? So yeah, when I first read it, there wasn't all of them out, and then I just never got back around to it, but I believe there's 3 of them in this, and they're all out now. So there you go. Those are some plus size heroines and heroes. Let me know some of your favorites. Again, I have other videos with this, so if there's some I didn't mention, like specifically one of them has more of the historical wrecks that have plus size heroines in them, so check that out. And then, yeah, I have links to all of the books down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let me know if there's any videos you would like me to make, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.